So where does your food really come from? I mean, seriously, think about it. How does a tomato grown way over in California end up on your dinner table in New York? Well, it's not some kind of magic trick. It's the U.S. food supply chain. And while it's this incredible logistical masterpiece, it's also a system where, as you'll see, a handful of really powerful players are pulling the strings.
All right, so to really get our heads around this, we're going to follow the journey of your food. We'll look at production, which is all about the input gatekeepers. Then processing, the big consolidated bottleneck. We'll touch on the cold chain, this unseen network that's so critical. After that, distribution, or the middle aggregators. And finally, retail, the consumer gatekeepers. By the time we're done, I promise you'll look at your grocery cart in a whole new light. Okay, first up, production. Now, you might think this story starts on a farm, right, with a farmer out in a field, but actually, we need to back up even further. It really begins in a lab with what we call input gatekeepers. We're talking about massive companies that control the absolute essentials, the seeds, the fertilizers, the pesticides, basically the very building blocks of our food.
So yeah, these input giants are a pretty big deal. They're the corporations providing all those initial technologies. The seeds, the crop protection, you name it. They get the whole production cycle rolling. Because they have such a tight grip on these inputs, they have an enormous say in what gets grown and how it gets grown. Their choices create ripples that travel all the way through the system, right to your plate.
And when I say enormous say, I am not exaggerating one bit. Just look at this. Globally, a tiny number of companies control somewhere between 60 to 70% of the pesticide market, and for seeds, it's 50 to 60%. That is a staggering amount of control for just a few players.
And if you think that's concentrated, wait till you see what's happening right here in North America. For nitrogen-based products, and these are absolutely essential fertilizers, get this, just 4 firms supply 75% of the market. 75%, that's a textbook oligopoly, and it means those few companies have a massive influence on the prices farmers have to pay. All right, so once the crops are harvested and they leave the farm, they move into the next critical phase, processing and manufacturing. This is where raw agricultural goods get turned into the food products we actually recognize. And trust me, this is where things get really consolidated.
People often describe this part of the chain using the hourglass effect, and it's a perfect analogy. Picture it. At the top of the hourglass, you've got thousands upon thousands of independent farmers. At the bottom, millions of us, the consumers. But in the middle, that narrow little pinch point, that's where a handful of super powerful processing companies sit, and everything has to flow through them.
And believe me, that bottleneck has been getting squeezed tighter and tighter over the last few decades. Let's take U.S. beef processing as a prime example. If you go back to 1980, the top 4 firms controlled about 36% of the market. Okay, significant, but not overwhelming. Fast forward to today, and that number has skyrocketed to somewhere between 80 and 85%. That is a massive, massive consolidation of power. So who are these 4 companies? We're talking about Tyson Foods, JBS, Cargill, and National Beef. Just those 4. When you have so few companies dominating an industry like this, it gives them incredible leverage. Economists have a term for this, the CR4 ratio, which measures the market share of the top 4 firms. And a number this high is a huge red flag for a lack of real competition.
Okay, so the food is processed, but now what? A lot of it can't just sit around, right? It needs to be kept cold. This brings us to a part of the supply chain that you can't really see, but it's absolutely critical. It's not a single location, but a condition, the cold chain.
Yeah, you can think of it as, quote, a continuous environmental condition rather than a discrete location. It's this unbroken, temperature-controlled network that's essential for all our perishable foods. Meat, dairy, fresh produce. It has to be perfectly maintained from start to finish. Any break in that chain, and you've got spoilage.
The infrastructure of the cold chain is what really defines the radius of freshness. It's literally the reason why perishable food can travel clear across the country and still be good to eat. I mean, without it, our entire food system would be hyper-localized. We'd all be eating seasonally, and the variety we're so used to, it just wouldn't exist.
And this isn't just a bunch of big fridges. We're talking about a seriously sophisticated operation. There are precise thermal protocols for chilled goods that's usually between 2 and 8 degrees Celsius. It uses active monitoring systems, think IoT sensors and data loggers tracking everything in real time, and it has complex risk mitigation frameworks for when things go wrong, like a power outage. It's an incredible technological feat.
Okay, so our food has been processed and kept perfectly chilled. Now it's time for the next major step, wholesale and distribution. You can think of these guys as the middle-mile aggregators. They're the circulatory system of the whole industry. And this segment is also dominated by some massive players. You've got Cisco, which has about 17% of the food service market, followed by US Foods with 10% and Performance Food Group with 8%. These giants are the bridge between thousands of different manufacturers and literally millions of places where we buy food, from restaurants to grocery stores.
The absolute nerve center of this whole operation is the Regional Distribution Center, or RDC. These places are huge. They are the key hubs where products from all kinds of different suppliers get brought in, consolidated, and then sent out. It's what allows a single truck to show up at a restaurant or a store with everything they need, from ketchup to frozen fries. It's a non-stop logistical dance.
All right, we've made it to the final stage of the journey: retail and food service. These are the final gatekeepers. This is the last mile, the point where we, as consumers, finally come face to face with the end result of this massive, complex chain. But these retailers are so much more than just a place to shop. They wield an incredible amount of power. They are the ones who control our access to food. They completely dominate shelf space, deciding what you see and what you don't. They leverage all that point-of-sale data to understand our habits, and they're even creating their own competition with private label brands.
And that last point is a huge deal. The expansion of private label or store brand products has been a game changer. You see them everywhere, right? These products now make up over 24% of total grocery sales. This allows the retailers to compete directly with the very manufacturers whose products they sell. It gives them even more leverage.
So let's take a step back and look at the whole picture, the full architecture of control. We've walked through this entire journey from a tiny seed all the way to the supermarket checkout.
And what becomes really clear is that the U.S. food supply chain is this rigid architecture of specialized nodes. And the real structural power, it doesn't really lie with the farmer or even with us, the consumer. It's in the physical infrastructure, the massive processing facilities, those critical cold storage networks, and the sprawling regional distribution centers. Those are the choke points. Whoever controls them has the real power.
So understanding this system, this architecture, is key, because it shows us exactly where the leverage points are. It explains why a disruption in just one single part can send shockwaves through the entire system. Which leaves us with a big question: what does happen when a single part is disrupted? Remember to click that subscribe button and visit foodindustry.com for more info.